right, this is part number 2. On the first episode, we talked about her denouncing faith and one of the reasons for doing so. So on part number 2, she did another video where she kind of breaks down one of the situations. She's going to get into it. One of the situations that made her to solidify her beliefs that she's no longer going to be a Christian. And
so to give you guys an understanding of why I just couldn't make peace with the concept of free will and why I couldn't equate it to God's love, I've been in therapy for 6 years.
So if you don't know what she's talking about not being, her being against free will, please do watch the first video. In the first video, we explained that and explained the doctrine behind it and why free will is a good thing. I'm going to move on from that point. We're not going to explain that here. So check the first episode on that one.
I've seen 5 different therapists. My therapist would be shocked when they'd hear the things that I've gone through. And to the point where the second therapist was literally blown away by the fact that I made it to the age of 18 without antidepressants. Because, hey, I've seen life. And for me, there were so many times when I'd ask myself, like, why didn't God protect me? Like, why didn't God protect me from some of those situations? And I remember last year, I was in a bad place again, and I was speaking to my pastor about it. And he said to me, the problem is that you think that God will force people to act right, but he won't, because God doesn't dictate people's choices. But for me, it's like, God doesn't dictate people's choices. Cool. But he is all-powerful, and therefore he can.
So why does she say cool? She says cool because, okay, it's fine. That's what you decide, but this is what I think. So she's trying to dictate for God what to do. So what you're saying dictates for God what to do. And I'm going to run it back here.
God doesn't dictate people's choices. Cool. But he is all-powerful, and therefore he can. He can stop people from making certain decisions that will affect me negatively, but he just chooses not to.
So if he dictates your actions about people hurting you, he can also dictate your actions about you denying him. That's the thing that we explained in the first episode. And so free will applies all around. You can't choose where it applies.
So whether Lesego gets hurt or not. So my question about free will came up again when in 2020 God spoke to me and told me to forgive my dad. So my dad is a deadbeat and I cut him off when I was like 16. That was the last time I spoke to him. So fine, I go find my dad, I forgive him, we try to build a relationship, but my dad has not changed. He's still the same person that he was. He hasn't worked on himself. So obviously this means I'm gonna get hurt again. Like all the work that I've done in therapy, screw that, because I must forgive my dad. I must be the bigger person. I must bring him back into my life to cause more damage.
You don't have to have him in your life, but being forgiving towards him. Okay, so the thing again with what Lesego is saying here, okay, we're not beating her up, but we just want to make her aware of it. You are appealing towards the situations with self-righteous view. You see, we are forgiving when we look back at ourselves. To become more forgiving towards a person who's done you wrong, you have to look back at yourself. Love is what I portray to them, but what they give back to me doesn't define what love I'm giving them. So people are going to behave how they behave. You give love either ways, which is the thing that we were talking about on the Saturday live stream. So if you have time, go check it out. It's like an hour long. We do break down this aspect of the Bible talking about what giving love looks like. Is that don't do it expecting people to respond a certain way. Like the changing of your father, that might never happen. You forgive him. It doesn't mean you have to have him in your life. That's the wrong perception about forgiveness that people have. I can be forgiven to my father, like I've talked about it on this channel. I can be forgiven to my father and his ways, but I don't have to have him. You can approach forgiveness in self-righteousness of saying, yeah, I've worked on myself. You are a no-change person. Get away from me.
Like all the work that I've done in therapy, screw that, because I must forgive my dad. I must be the bigger person. I must bring him back into my life to cause more damage. And God is not...
Yeah, but being forgiven doesn't mean that. And so just wanted to highlight that just so that we are clear here. We're not saying take him back. And if someone says, if a pastor, I know pastors like saying that, you're wrong if you're a pastor. Jesus, after he does the miracle of the 5,000, they come to him asking him to do the miracle again. And the Bible says he did not devote himself to them because he knew them. So there you go. Okay? He's forgiven of them. He is considerate of them, but he doesn't give himself over for them. And so there you have it.
Gonna hold him accountable to change.
Just a second.
To be the bigger person. I must bring him back into my life to cause more damage. And God is not gonna hold him accountable to change. No, but I'm gonna be held accountable to forgive and love.
No, we are both held accountable. You are held accountable to being forgiving. He is held accountable to being a disciple or changing. If he's not saved, of course, you're not going to have. Expecting him to change when he's not saved, you're asking for something else. Only a saved person has a perception of discipleship, which brings a person to changing. But expecting that from a person who's not saved, I mean, like, you're asking for another thing. And
so again, I ended up getting hurt in the process, and it was horrible, a horrible experience. Like, having my dad back in my life was one of the worst things I've ever had to go through. It was terrible. I was always crying. I'd pray about it. I'd go speak to my pastor about it. And again, the answer I would always get is that I need to pray for myself to be more loving, to be more tolerant.
No, that church, they don't understand the Bible properly. And this is very popular. A lot of people teach that. By the way, that's why I'm actually mentioning it here, is that a lot of people think being forgiving means just accommodate rubbish people. No. I'm not having that. Okay? The Bible does show the epistles. You see the Bible talking about cutting off people. You know, it talks about believers who are behaving funny. He says, cut them off. 1 Corinthians chapter number 5. You have an example of that, where people who are unchanging and whatnot, cut them off. He says, commit this one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh. So there you have it. But there are pastors that don't understand that. They read, be forgiving, be loving, and then they think, just take anything. So, my sister, you were taught false doctrine. That pastor who taught you that didn't understand how to apply the Bible. On the other point, he was right. On the other point that we spoke about earlier on, he was right. But on this point, he was wrong.
To be forgiving, but there is no responsibility on my dad to actually be a better person. But me, I must be the bigger person. And again, that led me to a place where I was just like, again, God is not protecting me. God is not protecting me again, and he's the one who put me back in this situation.
It's not God that put you in that position. It's just you didn't have the right understanding, the right theological understanding on how to handle that. Loving someone does not mean you have to drag that person back into your life. That's not what it means. But many people have misinterpreted it so. And so, yeah, I think I see what you guys wanted me to see from these videos. But it also helped for people that might have gone through the same experience to know how to interpret this subject. Okay? People easily misinterpret these things because the theological understanding around them, it's not as clear. And so in this situation, I hope this video does find you well, and I hope her also, she can get this video or understand the right application. But if this is the reason why she disbelieved, this is why we say she never believed. Now, you believed something. Definitely. There's no denying that. You believed something. But that doesn't dismiss, because you have questions that you are not answered about. That does not dismiss the existence of God. We believe in God because he exists. It's not because the things that happen down here. Okay, now if you don't like the things that God has set up, yeah, you just don't believe in God. And so that's a different thing. You're kind of like an atheist or an agnostic or whatever it is. And so just wanted to actually do a small little breakdown, explanation for this particular one. It's the Reality Show with the Daily Christian Commentary videos. Again, I say, we speak like this of our convictions. This is my conviction. You might be convicted differently, that's fine. And I'll see you later. Y'all be blessed. Salute.